Welcome everybody to the Network Plumbing Working Group meeting for Thursday, September 10th, 2020. Doug, I believe you have the first item on the agenda with governance doc voting.
All right, thank you, Dan. So last week we discussed the possibility of voting on the governance doc. So I've gone through and made what I anticipate could be a final pass through. For the most part, it's just been finishing touches here. I had some nice reviews from people that I appreciate. There wasn't anything major structurally outside of one section that I added that is about the GitHub organization ownership. So that would be people that are listed as a owner role in the GitHub organization. This is essentially, it's like the administrative privileges for all of the repositories. So this is the kind of role that can add, delete, transfer ownership, etc. So essentially what I wanted to do was, right now it's Dan and I listed there, and I want to make sure that it's equitable, that we have representation from a number of organizations as ownership role. But essentially what I wanted to do is make sure that it's well represented there. But I also added some language to essentially say, like, you can't make a drastic change to this stuff without bringing it to the meeting. So essentially, I essentially tried to make it a figurehead type of role. So you would have some responsibility because you're the one who would add somebody to the list to say you are now an official maintainer, right? To give you the like merge privileges for a repository. That's essentially what your role would be here. You may create repositories, but in the case that we need to delete, rename, etc., mostly that would come to the meeting first, and we decide that that stuff as a group. So I think that as far as changes go, that's the most major item there. And also I realized that I didn't have a link to the actual proposal doc here. So that's probably the most notable thing to be aware of. Otherwise, I also just wanted to clarify that there's kind of two parts here, and one of which is voting on the governance doc, and then also we separately, I think, would vote on having the code of conduct document. But the governance doc itself, what we would be approving is two sections in the proposal. So one of which is the mission statement section, and then the governance section. So there's kind of some extra stuff in this document that would include the like summary of changes, an overview of what the heck we're trying to do here, and then there's I like had stubbed in like an amendments section, so maybe in the future we would add an amendment or whatever. So we wouldn't accept that. There's nothing in there. And then the code of conduct. Notably, the code of conduct does need at least one change, which is essentially there's an email address in there that says if you have a problem and you need to get in touch with somebody, it's here. I had stubbed that in with my own personal information, and I'm happy to take that role if people want, but I do think that it would probably be wise to have some type of alias there. I also think that I would advised to not use the mailing list for this for two reasons. One of which is technically you can't just send a mail to it without being a member of the group. And two, in case it's something sensitive that somebody doesn't want in the public eye, there's that. So that's essentially where I'm at, and I certainly would love to take the pulse of the group to see if we're ready to vote on this, or if people think that there are outstanding issues that we need another cycle to address.
Yeah, hi, Doug,
Hi, Itay.
how are you? So first, thanks for driving this effort. On behalf of the Net NVIDIA team, I can say that, we are definitely ready to make a vote.
Excellent.
I did have one question, Doug, that I added to the document, and that was under GitHub organization ownership. And the second paragraph there reads, to become an owner of the GitHub organization, a member may indicate their candidacy to become an owner by adding an item to the agenda. Do we want just, any member to become an owner of the GitHub org, or should that be limited to members who are already maintainers? Was my question. I see a case for maybe where a member who wants to be in more of a project management role could be an owner and basically be the driver of or a driver of the GitHub org, but not necessarily do code contributions. But I'm not sure how.
And so, yeah, I was originally thinking that that I put member there intentionally in case we had that particular situation where, let's say, trying to get ownership from across a number of organizations. If somebody thought among their organization that it might be better to have somebody who has a role more like that, that's maybe a project management type of role or something,
Sure.
to offer that. Although I do think that that's probably an edge case. I think that it's likely that you would probably be a maintainer. I did put in this blurb that says when you become a candidate, you should have some kind of blurb to say why. And my guess is probably that blurb would read something along the lines of, I have a history of contribution to projects X, Y, and Z, and it would be useful for the maintenance of those, and I could contribute to the larger effort of this ownership. So maybe in another case where you're just a member, it may read something like, I perform this role in my organization and I can do this in lieu of 7 other people doing it or whatever. If people are okay with that, otherwise I'm totally fine with changing that to maintainer. I feel like that would be a reasonable graduation path here.
Yeah, the alternative is that, because it would be going up for a vote from members, maybe that is sufficient and the members can decide to filter, or bring that up as a consideration when voting on the proposal. And the other question was, if you have a gathering where there are no maintainers present, a meeting where no maintainers are present, and you achieve quorum, does that allow election of a GitHub owner Although I guess somebody has to add that person to the ownership on GitHub, an existing owner. So I guess that's not a problem. Never mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in some ways it is touchy because it does give you the keys. Yeah.
Well, in any case, we do have to start from somewhere. We can change the governance proposals or the governance document later. So I think I'm okay with keeping member right now.
Okay.
I did
All right.
resolve my comment on the doc, and then I went through and resolved other comments that look like they had answers, just so that we have a clearer idea of what outstanding questions, if any, there are.
All right, awesome. I realized that I missed one from Billy, and Billy, just thank you for your detailed read through. He's had some great comments, but one of the kind of tweaks that we were making was related to the verbiage for basically meetings for projects that happen outside of this meeting. We want to allow people who do contribute to these projects to have meetings, and there was some kind of crossing of the streams here with maintainer versus project. And Billy, there's an outstanding one here that reads, if maintainer meetings occur with regularity, and Billy suggested that we change this to project, and I agree, and I'm going to make that change right now. So essentially it's to say, you know, maintainer is a specific role under this group, but contribution happens in a public sense, and kind of projects and contributors are their own thing that isn't necessarily a maintainer. So I think that that's also a reasonable change. So thank you, Billy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that looks good to me. That was just my last little, just make sure they could meet out. It was okay according to the governance for them to meet outside of the network plumbing working group. So, and I do like that they should report back in. So I think that's good too. So all looks good to me.
Awesome. All right, very good. Thank you, guys.
So at least from my point of view, I'm ready to vote. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll give a +1 that I am ready to vote.
Yeah, I'm good too.
Okay, well, that being said, if there are no, if there's nobody who thinks that we have outstanding issues, then I guess we could move forward with a vote. I believe what we noted last meeting, I'm just checking this, was to say, basically, anyone who's been in at least 2 of these meetings before and has contributions somewhere in the group previously, so that includes this one, would be available to, it's totally cool for you to vote, for the lack of a better term. And I think in the spirit of the document, we probably should make sure that our quorum is good and that we meet the criteria for, representation from each organization.
And make sure we don't have too many from one company. Looks like we have a lot of red hatters. So
exactly.
Yeah, although some red hatters could abstain from voting.
correct.
Totally. So we'll make sure to do that.
All right. Do you want to run that, Doug?
Yeah, absolutely. I think let's take a look here. This is a coming up with a little bit of process on the fly here. Let's just run down the participant list in Zoom. Ask for a vote. I guess. Otherwise, I'm trying to figure out if I need to reconcile the representation.
Maybe
Yeah.
maybe we should just check if there's any objections, because if there's no objection, it is a little bit meaningless to kind of check the validity of the.
Hey,
if there is rejection, yeah, just eliminating technique.
Absolutely. I think that that's a solid logic right there. We have some people that are fairly good with logic in this group, so that's pretty good. All right, I guess let's start with that. Any objections to the governance doc? I'm giving the mic timeout buffer here for unmuting. All right, no objections. Excellent. Hopefully that means it's all a yes to accept it. Any that choose to not accept the mission statement and governance? All right, that's excellent. I will say that this is one of my favorite parts about this group, is that we usually continue a discussion until we can have a we can have everyone voting the same way. And as far as I can remember, that's always been the way it's been in this group. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for that. And I think it sets the stage for what we have going here. So that's awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Doug. That was good work on the document.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so
Thank you again.
much.
Thanks, Doug.
Hey, yeah, no problem. You guys make it very pleasurable. So I appreciate that.
So what is next?
Okay, so while we're here, let's also take a look at the look at the code of conduct, and we may have a little bit of the technical problem of the email address to use here. So let's take a look. Yeah, so this is on page number. Come on, Google, where I'm looking in the wrong place for the page number.
Last page.
It's on the last page. Okay, that helps. Yeah, it is page 9. And you'll see that there is a comment here. You may specifically contact Doug Smith. And this is, I believe, what we need to change here. I don't think that this is an emergency by any means as well. So I guess alternatively, what we can do is I can think about having how to handle like some kind of email alias that we can use, and then we can have volunteers who are part of a like, you know, email list that will handle anything here. I don't expect this to be a major problem in this group, and we've never had anything like this before. I just think that it's a good idea to have this stuff in place before any possible problem arises.
So in your thinking, like how many owners do you think they're going to be? Like right now there's 2. Are you looking at like 12? Are you looking at like 5 or 6? I'm wondering if you could have an alias and then you just say the alias goes to the owners or something like that.
Yep, I think that totally works too. I would expect, I don't know, from my like best guess is maybe a half dozen would be plenty of ownership. I don't know that it needs to be more than that. And by the same token, you know, if people have interest in that, I'm not opposed to it being 7 or 8 or whatever, but probably 4 to 6 sounds
right. So if you, I guess, I mean, the whole point of this is if you have some concern that you want to raise, but you don't necessarily want to bring up to the whole group, you want to write to someone. But on the flip side, if you've got some alias email just sitting in there and no one knows where that goes, who's really going to send to it? So you should somehow like say, without giving the actual names, like who it's going to, like the role of owner or the ones who are going to get this, and then they can go look at that list and see who's going to receive it. Otherwise, it's kind of useless to have an alias because, you know, if I don't know who this is going to, I'm not sure I'm just going to randomly send it. If that makes sense.
Maybe it's not a bad idea to have both an individual volunteer and email alias. All right.
Because for example, if I have a problem with Doug Smith and then all I see is an alias and then I go to send the alias and the alias goes to Doug Smith, that doesn't do me any good. So you got to somehow know roughly. I don't know if in the conduct you need to have everyone listed out specifically, so if they changes over time, you don't have to keep updating the code of conduct. But either that, or if I don't know if GitHub allows other roles dynamically that they could look and see who is the, you know, the code of conduct manager, and that can change over time, but that's a role in there that people can see, or maybe it's added to another document like the owners is in that community section.
Okay, sweet. Yeah. So Billy, did I capture this right in the agenda, which is let's both have an individual volunteer as well as an alias that goes to all the owners?
Either that, or I mean, I don't know if I could do either. I just think you need to specify, even if you have an alias in the background, who that alias is going to. Otherwise, it doesn't. I'm not going to send to an alias. Now, if you want that volunteer, you know, if that volunteer is, as long as we can document that, like in the community section, you know, like another like conduct manager or conduct policeman or whatever you want to call it, and you just have that name in there that so they know who it's going to, and that way that can change over time, but you don't have to go through every repo and change the code of conduct. I guess that was just the gist, and I'm just brainstorming here. So
yeah, no, I'm with you as well. All right, so I'm thinking we need a little bit of time to figure out the technicality for this. In terms of the content of the code of conduct, which is boilerplate, it comes from contributor-covenant.org. Does anyone have a problem with the content otherwise, excluding the email address? Okay, cool. Well, that makes it much easier. Let's think about how to handle that email alias. I'll do some thinking on it. There's got to just be a Google way to do this, because I don't think that anyone wants to manage a sendmail instance or something like that. Or if you do want to manage that, have at it. But I don't think I'll volunteer for it. I think the sendmail O'Reilly book you can probably use as a boat anchor. It's huge. So okay, let's defer this to next time. I'll come back with proposed email address and alias situation suggestion. Okay, so that's one of the next steps, was the code of conduct. We'll work through that, finishing that up next time. But I think the next steps include we'll need to create the stub documents for the community repo. And then I put in a few items that we can handle, some of them this meeting, maybe some of them next meeting. And so as of right now, we've accepted the governance doc, but we don't have any members or maintainers. And so we'll basically, the way the governance document is written is that we will, to become a member, you basically put your name down and say, I'd like to become a member. If no one disagrees, you're a member. You wind up on our official list, which will be in the community repo. And then maintainers will just take a minute longer for people to do. And so maybe this is appropriate for the next meeting, because essentially you put your name down, you have to be a member. Then you say, I'd like to be a maintainer of repositories X, Y, and Z. And then same thing, if no one disagrees, you're accepted, you become a maintainer. We'll need to do the same thing with the owners. And then probably most importantly is that we'll need to accept and create any new repositories that we're going to have. And maybe secondarily, we need to have a review of the repositories that currently exist. So that's what I see as the next steps. Does anyone have any ideas on how much we should do this meeting, how much we should wait for the next one? Also, I guess lastly, but probably importantly, is we'll need to have the governance doc in the community as well. I propose that we change it to a markdown document so it's easy to read on GitHub. And I can volunteer to do that.
Do we, to help speed, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot on there for next week. Is there, or the next meeting, is there something we can do, like start collecting a list of members and maintainers or people that would, you know, like have a document where people like, you've got multiple things going on here. You've got the network plumbing working group itself where you want a list of members, and then you need a list of maintainers of individual projects. And do we want to just start a document so people start putting their names in just to speed things along for the next meeting?
Yeah, so currently the way the governance doc is written is to say that it winds up in the agenda. So my guess is, actually, let's just do this right now. I'm just gonna go ahead and put in a 24th attendees, and then let's see. I'm going to make an agenda item that's regular business, and I'm going to say member candidates, maintainer candidates, and repository proposals. So what I'll do here is I will add in this September 24th section, I'll just stub in an example of being a candidate. So I'll make a quick, and then, yeah, we're also going to need, yeah, so 4 parts. New
So
members,
this is
new
network
maintainers.
network plumbing working group member candidates, right?
Yeah, and that would apply to all of these.
Okay.
Doug, is it okay if we actually I don't see this document. I don't know if you shared it or not, but can we suggest candidates for the repo like in this meeting?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I guess the only shortfall is just that we'll need to write down each person and then the list of repositories that they want to be a maintainer of. And then for the new repositories, what we'll just need is the name of the repository and then a blurb to go along with them to describe what they are. I don't think that it, like for example, we have some repositories that we would like to have as new repositories. They're existing projects. I think they're fairly well known. I don't think that we need to like write like a scope and spec document or whatever. I think we just need a short description. If people want to move forward with that today, that's great. Although I think that what we would probably need to do is take a 10 minutes of radio silence for people to write up these, etc.
Generally speaking, we have on the NVIDIA side, we have a couple of ideas, both, the existing repository that part of this team has been working on and some other, repositories that we want to drive. There is no, I don't think it makes sense to wait on the line for 10 minutes. So I think if you, maybe you can share the document, we can add this information offline.
Yeah, I just
Okay.
posted it in the chat.
Okay, sure. Yes, so I'll take an action again on the NVIDIA team to work on this, and we can drive this forward.
Okay, cool. And you know what I will do as well is I am going to, I'll send a mail out to the mailing list that gives people this link, and I'll have the kind of examples in here for me. I'll put myself up as a candidate for member, maintainer, GitHub organization status, and then an example repository proposal. And then everyone can go through and add those. And then this can just be the first order of business next meeting. Does that sound like a good plan to folks?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. Yeah,
Doug?
I don't mean for this to take longer than it has to.
Hi, Doug. Can you hear me?
Oh, hey, Abdul.
Yeah. So are there any limitation of how many maintainers we can have per repository? Like right now, that the government's model doesn't specify that. So basically, every member can apply to become a maintainer.
Yes, that's true. There is no limitation as of the moment. And I think that the way that it's written is to say, sure, you can have as many maintainers from a given organization or as many maintainers on a project, but when it comes to accepting a pull request, you should have a equitable representation from different companies.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, no problem.
All right, with about 20 minutes left here, Doug, do we have more to discuss on this one? Should we continue on with other agenda items and punt any more governance stuff till next meeting?
Yeah, thanks guys for taking so much of this meeting on this. I would love it if we can chat up the regular reasons why we're here. Awesome, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your work on this, Doug. All right, Tomo, multi-network policy update.
Okay. So can you hear me, by the way?
Yes,
You're
we can.
live.
Okay, cool. So as the put it in the agenda, so currently we have the one repository for multi-network policy, and then this contains everything. I mean that the schema files and the APIs, and then the some IP table implementation as well. But also the of course the IP table is not the only one for filtering stuff, right? So the eBPF and then the DPDK and the NF table, various filtering mechanism is also available. So I'm expecting that someone bringing the another implementation such as the multi-network policy TC. so that's why I'm just wondering that I'm making a separate from the schema and then the APIs and implementations. So now I'm creating the multi-network policy IP table repository and then putting the IP table based implementation code. And then the now I'm proposing the pull request to multi-network policy as the API and the utilities among the various implementation. I mean the common code for multi-network policy. So like the so currently I'm just thinking about the API util and the schema and the goal types and then the generated client, which is the Kubernetes code generator stuff. So if so I'd like to double check with you guys to go proceed to making a separate. So if any objections or some comments for that, please let me know. And then within the a few hours from now, and then after that, I'm making the update to the multi-network policy, and then the multi-network policy IP table repository.
Well, Tomo, I'll just add my comment that I think that this is an awesome way to move forward, and thank you for separating this out into the API and utilities so that there can be other implementations of this without having to either have it jammed into all the code base, or for people to have to sift out IP tables if they want to have another implementation. So I'm all for it.
So this has been away for a while. So I really like this, but question, is this still for the first interface, or are you trying to do it for all interfaces when you have more than one interface?
So the merge network policy, the schema has the annotations, which is the which interface should be the target. The user can specify the network attachment definition name.
Okay,
to
you
the,
put that in the network policy.
Yes, so that this
Okay.
network policy is only for the network attachment definition. So regarding the cluster-wide network interface, Kubernetes already have the network policy. So that's the candidate.
Cool.
Okay, yep, that's it.
I have a question. Does anybody plan on working on the TC Flower implementation of the multi-network network policy? I guess not.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I don't see anyone is actually working on that right now. I think the main purpose we want to use TC backend implementation is we want to gain the hardware assisted offloading with TC. And I think we need to understand the hardware capability of how they offload the TC rules here first, with and without switch stack mode, and then we can design how we implement the backend of TC. I think that's what we have discussed in the resource map meeting. Maybe.
Okay.
All right. Next up, device information proposal.
Okay.
Adrian, Billy?
Yes. So we have given the proposal yet another spin. Thank you very much to all of you who added comments on the proposal. I think it's in a relatively good shape. I also have a proof of concept working. I have the links in the agenda document. Basically, the changes are we have refactored a little bit the document so that there is a big section called Best Practices for Device Information Management. Please suggest another name if you feel like it. I'm not very good at naming. But this is ideally the document that the current spec will refer to when we decide not to put things in the MPWG spec, and we want to refer to this best practices document. Well, this is the proposed document. Whether we end up putting it in a repository or in another format, that's to be decided. But that is the proposed final document content. What else? We have fixed a couple of errors, and we have unified the way of sending the information to the CNIs, to the CNI plugins. So I think that is a much clearer implementation, and it's more flexible. In essence, the Multus or the Network Plumbing Working Group implementation would decide to generate a CNI device file, and will send the file name in a runtime config key, and so the CNI will pick that up, and it's up to the CNI to create a device information file there. And if it does, then the implementation will pick it up and add it to the network status annotation. So I think I would like to ask for a final round of comments, or if we are ready to vote on it, or also I can show you real quick the result on a live demo right now, if you prefer. Oh,
Yeah,
Dan, I just seen your comments.
I put a few more comments in the doc. It may be that they've already been addressed, or I'm just confused about the proposal. We can follow up with those comments in the Google Doc itself, or something like that, if you'd like, given we have like 9 minutes left. But yeah, just a couple of comments and maybe some clarifications.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we have time to vote or if we're ready for a vote. However, I think what we need is feedback. What else we need in order to start that vote process. So, any of that feedback would be awesome. So Dan, maybe Doug, do you think we're close on this, or do we still have a ways to go? Are we in the right direction?
I personally think it's close. It's more at this point, I think, bike shedding about specific details. But yeah, I think the direction is good. And we've worked out most of the high level architecture type stuff and reasoning for why things need to be the way they are. So yeah, I think we're pretty close.
So one question that I had, and I'm fine with the way it's laid out, but I wasn't sure, like the way it's laid out is we have a device field that's defined in the spec, and then the data fields, it just says it's an object, and those kind of refer to the best practices on the subfields. Do those subfields need to be documented, or is the best practices the best way to do that? I mean, by doing it through the document, I guess we have more flexibility on some of the stuff we pass, but then it's not necessarily specified. So I wasn't sure which was the preferred route.
Which specific info are you thinking?
So if you go to the network plumbing specification modifications, and where it talks about 5.3.7, it says device.
Right.
So it says there is a optional key, and then, but it doesn't necessarily specify all the subfields of the device. It says, look at the best practices to say what, what those subfields are. And I'm fine with it. I just don't know if that's the preferred method or we prefer to actually specify every field because it is a spec.
I mean, we can leave it open for additional fields, but I think I think we should be a little bit tighter about that, because otherwise it's, somebody could use the device key and, have something completely different from best practices. I think it's a good question, though.
Yeah, maybe one model to follow might be like, for example, in the CNI spec, there's like a like well-known fields. So it's like, if you expect that there's whatever, a handful of fields that basically always make sense, maybe we should have those and say the rest for more detail, check out the best practices, otherwise it's arbitrary. That might be a model to follow.
Okay.
Otherwise, and also I like reading through the spec modifications. I don't have major problems in general. And I probably could be convinced either way here on these fields with the arbitrary, although some guidance from inside this document may be good with the like whole implementation picture in the best practices doc.
Say that last sentence again. So are you saying that
Oh yeah, sorry.
the specification updates need to give a little more detail? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, maybe maybe give some guidance to the reader here without having to give the entire implementation picture, which I would anticipate being in the best practices doc.
Okay, so add a little more verbiage to the spec modification to kind of say this is the intent. However, you don't need the full best practices document in the spec, but just a little more context within the spec.
Yeah, maybe maybe a short list of well-known fields and anticipated use.
Okay.
But I like it being extensible and saying, hey, there's more that you could do with this, or you may need other information. I mean, that totally makes sense to me as well.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of this is to start trying to nail it down a little bit so that we do have a specification, so that it's not just the wild, wild west on what you're passing up.
Awesome.
However, there is a need for maybe some flexibility as well. So trying to hit it from both sides.
So we are almost out of time. Let's do one more round on that. I think the model that we have in the rest of the doc with respect to like conventions MD and what Doug was talking about with well-known fields is probably a good model to use here to start with. Since we already have prior examples of that. Does that sound okay? I'm happy continuing conversation on my comments in the Google Doc comments as well.
Yeah, no, that's all good feedback. So we'll take
Okay.
it, and hopefully we can
Right.
keep it
Yep.
moving.
Yeah,
Thank you
I
very
think
much.
we're close.
Yeah, thank you guys on this one. It's a big one.
All right. Any last items in the last minute that we have? Going once? Going twice? All right. See everybody in 2 weeks. Thanks.
All right, catch you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.
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 Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.